Hi everybody, in this lecture we are going to be covering number methods in detail. So number methods actually help you work with numbers. Like in any other language, primitives like a number which is like a pi 3.14 or probably 2016 are numbers in the primitives. Now in these scenarios they don't have properties and methods, but as we mentioned even during the string methods, that for JavaScript methods and properties are also available for the primitive values, because JavaScript treats primitive values as objects when executing methods and properties. Now, one of the most important methods that we've seen in JavaScript and we will see now is the toString method. So the toString returns a number as a string, which is very simple from the English terminology itself. All number methods can be used on any type of numbers like literals, variables, and expressions. So let's quickly see toString in an example. So variable x is equals to 123, and let's do x dot toString. Let's just console.log so that we can see the output. Let's just run it, and the answer is 123 in quotes, which means it's a string. We can also directly do this without storing it into a value, so we can just say 123 and then dot toString. Let's try to run this again. This will give us an answer of 123. We can also do another thing. You can have mathematical computations. So let me just put a comma here and break to the new line, and I can do 100 plus 23 and a toString. It will still return the answer as let me clear it so that it's 123 three times. That was toString in action. Let me just put the comments in. toString method. Let's move on to see the other method that's available in our armor, and that's called toExponential. Now again, as the name suggests, it definitely has to deal with exponents. toExponential returns a string with a number rounded and return using exponential notation. So if you recollect, we already saw that the exponential format was 1, 2, 3 e raised to 5. This would give something to us as 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 zeros. That's what the exponential format is. So let's go and see how we can convert a number into an exponential format. So let's take an example of 9.656. Okay, now let's try to do a console.log and let's do y.toExponential, and let's just see what happens to this. Let's clear the console, run it, and the format is 9 point this e raised to plus 0. Similarly, if you want, you can give the exponent on how you want it to be returned, so of how many decimals. So let's take another example where I just want 2 decimals. In this scenario it was 3, so let's try to do 2 decimals and let's see what happens. Let's clear this, let's run. So you see that 56 is actually rounded off to 66, and that's how in fact any mathematical formula would be when you try to round off. If it is greater than 5, you round it off to the nearest upper value, and if it is less than 5, you round it out to the lowest value. So if this would have been a 64, the answer would have been 65 out here. So that's rounding it off to 2. If you want, you can round it off to 4 decimals as well, and JavaScript will pretty much add in a particular set of zeros at the end to match it. So in this scenario it added 1 0 because it already had 3 values, so on and so forth. Again, the parameter is optional, so if you don't specify it, it will just round the number off, and that's what we saw in the first scenario. That brings us to another method that we have in JavaScript. It's called toFixed. toFixed returns a string with the number written with a specified number of decimals. So let's see an example where we can use the same value of y out here, in fact, without doing anything. So let's just do a y. Let's do a console.log, and let's add a console log here so that we know that what we are doing. So console log, let's do toExponential so that we know these examples are exponential ones. Similarly, let's just put here for toString, so we know we are testing toString, and out here we will do toFixed so that we know that we are doing toFixed. So toFixed returns a string within a specified number of decimals. Sounds obvious, right? So let's try to do y.toFixed, and let's give 0 because we just don't want anything, and let's try to run this and see what happens. The answer is 10 because it rounded it off to the nearest integer, which is 10. If it would have been 9 point, let's try something. Let's try 9.456. In this scenario, it should return us 9. Again, this is the same logic that we use for rounding of numbers in mathematics. So let's give y, and if I wanted to round it off to 2 decimals, I can just specify 2, and it should return an answer, which is 9.66. In my personal opinion, 2 fixed is usually very good when you want to use with money. So if you have currency or you're dealing with money as a number, in that scenario you can use 2 fixed and it will always be correct. Let's go on to the next method which we have. It's called 2 precision. Let me just copy this before we get started. Okay. So 2 precision returns a string with a number written with a specified length. So if you specify the length, the number would be written to that particular length. Let's try and see example. Let's copy the same 2 fixed and see what happens. But just to keep in mind that for 2 precision, you cannot give in numbers which is and parameters which is greater than 21. So you can give anything between 1 and 21. So let's not give anything which assumes that it's 0. And let's see what's the difference. So for 2 precision, it doesn't do anything, but when you give 2 digits, it just gives you 2 numbers. Now in this scenario, let's try our example with number 4 and see what happens. In this scenario, it should just give you 4 numbers, which is 9, 6, 5, 6. That was 2 precision for us. Let's see another very cool method which is called value of in JavaScript. Let's quickly copy the console log so that we know what we're dealing with. Let's copy the value of. Okay. So value of returns a number as a number. What does that mean? So it may happen that you might just pass in a number or a computation and then expect a number in result. Value of will make sure that it will give you a number. Again, let's use the same example that we have. Let's use x in this scenario and see what we get. Let me copy this x2 string to value of. Let's just replace value of. Clear the console. Okay, so you see the answer is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 all throughout, because x was the value of 1, 2, 3 and you get a value of 1, 2, 3. You just pass 1, 2, 3, you get 1, 2, 3. You pass 100 plus 23, you get 1, 2, 3. Now, in JavaScript, a number can be a primitive value, which is type of number or type of object. The value of method is used internally in JavaScript to convert a number object to primitive values. So remember when we gave a number, new number, variable x equals to something which is a new number of something. For example, let's see this. Variable x1 is equals to new number of 10. Which means it assigns a value of 10. So internally what JavaScript does is it uses value of and gives you the value of 10 when you ask for it. So there is no reason for you to use this in your code if you're not using anything like number of, and JavaScript always takes care of it. It's more of an internal JavaScript method that it was created. Just like numbers, value of and toString methods are available for all the data types in JavaScript. Now let's say what happens when you have to do some conversions from a different data type to numbers. So well, there are certain methods that you can make use of. There are 3 actually, to be precise. Let's go and see them. So converting variables to numbers. Let's see, the first method that we have is the number. Yeah, it represents like a constructor if you understand Java. These methods are not number methods. Basically, they are global JavaScript methods. So, what are global JavaScript methods? JavaScript global methods can be used on all JavaScript data types. These are the most relevant methods when working with numbers. So, let's see the first one, that is number. Number can be used to convert JavaScript variables to numbers. So let's do a console log. Let's actually first copy this so we know that what we're dealing with. Number. Now let's try to create a variable, which is variable result is equals to, let's say, true. a boolean value. In that case, when you try to do a number of true, which is result, you should actually get the value as 1. Yes, that's right. Remember when I told you about conditional logic? The answer is 1. The result, which is true, is also indicated by 1 and false is indicated by 0. Similarly, you can also write strings. We have already done that, but let's try to do another example. Let's say instead of this, I pass in a string of 10 and clear, run, and the answer would be 10, number, no quotes. What if I give something as 10 years? What do you think should happen? It'll give you not a number. Well, because you have a combination of a number and a string. What if you give both as string? In this case, let's say 10 and 20. What should happen? It's again a not a number. So you see, the moment JavaScript fails to convert a particular string or an object or a value passed to it for the number parameter, it will give you a not a number text. And you can definitely write conditions around it, saying that if your input doesn't match a number, you'll get a not a number, and you can have conditions based off it. There's another cool method that we have. It's called parse int, and as the name suggests, it converts the particular passed in parameter to an integer. Everything will work just the same as we saw for number. Let's try to put a parse int and see the results for the same. Clear this, let's run this. Parse int. The first one is not a number, you cannot pass boolean to it. The second, 10 years, and 1020. So everything that it got, including these two, it was not a number, but the moment you used a parse int, it converted into the number that it could read. But what if the first item was a string? So let's say in this example, it says years 10. What should happen in this scenario? Well, in this scenario, it will not convert, it will give you a not a number, because years, the moment it sees years, it sees a string, and it cannot convert a string which is not a number to a number, and that's why it returns a not a number. However, when it gets a 10 years, it knows that the first element is a number, it reads it as a number, and the rest of it, the moment it sees a string, it seizes. However, when it goes 1020, similarly, the moment it sees a space, it understands that there's a string and it stops there. That brings us to the third of its kind, which is parse float. Another method that can be used to convert things to a particular number. Let's try to run the same example on parse float and see what happens. Okay, now that I have copied and pasted, let's see. So when you return a boolean, it still returns a not a number. The rest of it remains just like the parse int, and you get not a number. So what's different in this? Well, you can, let's say, have a value of 10.33. It will still convert it to 10.33, which will be a floating point number. That brings us to number properties. What do I mean by that? Well, there are a set of number properties that you frequently use, and you don't have to recreate the whole magic when you're using numbers. So JavaScript has your back, where remember when we saw that JavaScript can give you values up to 64 bits, which is like 15 numbers that you can have. Yes, you can fetch that using max value of JavaScript number is equal to, let's say, number dot, and as it's a constant, it will say max underscore value. Let's see the output and what the answer would be. So the max value it can have is this. Okay, it's hiding my console. Let's just give a blank space and see. Okay, so it gives you 1.79 something something e to 308 exponential raised to 308. Now that was max value of a particular JavaScript. What if you want to see a min value or minimum value? Let's do a min value for a JavaScript and see what happens. The answer is 5e raised to minus 324, which means to the decimal 0 point something 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 so on, 324 digits, the decimal would be. So that's the minimum value or the smallest number possible in JavaScript. Similarly, you also have placeholders for infinity. Infinity again can have a positive and a negative value. So you have something called as negative, I think that's how I spell it, infinity. And let's just put this here, negative infinity value. So that will give you as negative infinity, minus infinity. Similarly, if you want to check positive infinity, it will be, yes, you guessed it right, it should be positive. And please note that the reason you see all block letters, because that's also or uppercase letters, that's also a convention saying that these are constants, which means they are usually used as a constant when you need them and they cannot be overwritten. So if you're comparing something to as positive infinity, you can just say if number is equals to this and check your condition. So these are pretty much the border scenarios. You can either have a maximum value or a minimum value. If not that, you will have an infinity or a negative infinity. And there is the last category, which is not a number, which we have already seen throughout. So definitely if you want to check a condition for not a number, you can just do this. NaN, just the way the symbol is. And you should get the value as NaN. Now, number properties belong to the JavaScript's number object wrapper called number, which we already used. The moment we use a number dot something, it means it belongs to the number object. These properties can only be accessed as number dot something because they are properties of that particular object. So if you have any custom variable, let's say x equals to something, and you try to do x dot max value, it will definitely give you an undefined because the primitives don't understand what that is. But the moment you use a number dot something, which is a number object, it will understand that you're trying to access. Now, there's a big list of methods and properties for numbers as well, just like we have search string. I have attached URL. You can go and see the reference for each and everything that you can do with numbers. But pretty much these are the items that you will use in your day-to-day development or coding perspective. So go ahead and practice some numbers.